Welcome to Everyday Torah. A little while back, I made a little video on what Sabbath looks like in my life and Aimee's life. Aimee's my wife. And I had a good question down here in the comments. Here is what this nice lady writes. How about for doctors and nurses who work in hospitals or other first responders? So I first want to say that I have someone near and dear to my heart, my son, who is a police officer. He's a first responder. He works to help people. Presently, he is not scheduled on the Sabbath, on Shabbat, but what if he were? How would I counsel him? Anyway, I think it'd be first important to know what the Torah actually says. So Yahweh, here in Exodus 31, here in the yellow, you can read just kind of a preamble, but here it says, for 6 days work may be done, but on the seventh day there is a Sabbath of complete rest, holy to the Lord. Whoever does any work on the Sabbath day shall surely be put to death. So I don't want to address the death part at this point, but I'll just kind of, in a very parenthetical way, say that those who are in Messiah Yeshua, the law no longer condemns. It doesn't mean that we don't do the law. We're seeking to do the law, give the members of our body over to righteousness, but the infractions are paid for. And so when we miss the mark, when we sin, we confess our sins to the Father, and 1 John 1:9 tells us that he is always faithful to forgive us our sins and purify us from all unrighteousness. Of course, that doesn't mean we want to take advantage of that. Instead, we want to walk in righteousness. So here is the clear law here. Some also talk about, hey, don't buy or sell on that day. One of the proof texts for that would be from the book of Amos, here in the green. When will the new moon be over? This is an Israel who is anxious for the Shabbat to be over so that they may sell grain, and the Sabbath that we may open the wheat market. So the idea here is that instead of being with the Lord, you have a group of people that just want it to be over because they're not really concerned about being with the Lord. Instead, what they want is, hey, I got to go back to buying and selling, doing my thing, and I just want to do my thing. So that would be this text. I want to point out a number of New Testament texts, and the reason that I want to do that is that I don't want this to be my opinion. I want it to try to build a brief argument from the text. And again, this is the short version. So here we have Zechariah. He was a priest, and it says, and this is Luke chapter 1, now it happened that while he was performing his priestly service before God, in the appointed order of his division. Now, to the best of my understanding, have these priests, and they would circulate throughout the year. I think there were 24 different groups, and then they would go on duty, so to speak. So when he was on duty, he was chosen by lot to enter the temple of the Lord and burn incense. Now, during this time, Zechariah would have worked or done these things on the Shabbat. So not everyone was able to not work. This was clearly work. He was working, and he was doing a good thing in service to the Lord. So a lot of ministers it's a very much a work day. People who are teaching, who are opening the doors so that people can maybe come in so that they might worship the Lord on a Sabbath. They are certainly working. It's sometimes very exhausting. Now, in Matthew 12, we have these Pharisees, of course, that are always trying to entrap Messiah Yeshua. At that time, Yeshua, Jesus, went through the grain fields on the Sabbath, and his disciples became hungry and began to pick the heads of grain and eat it. Now, there is a Deuteronomy text that addresses this exactly. They were not breaking Sabbath or even a law. They weren't stealing. When you enter your neighbor's standing grain, then you may pluck the heads of your grain, and you shall not wield a sickle in your neighbor's standing grain. So the idea here is that if you're hungry and you're eating, you can't steal it by putting the sickle to it. And in the same way, these grapes up here, see the grapes? You can eat them till you're fully satisfied, but don't put any in your basket. The idea here is that they're watching what Jesus is doing with his disciples. They're going to wonder, hey, you're doing some work here. Well, what they were doing was not lawful, and they were hungry. And then Jesus talks about David entering into the tabernacle when him and some of his companions were hungry, and they ate the consecrated bread. Down here, Jesus simply says, so then it is lawful to do good on the Sabbath. And the illustration is, what man is there among you who has a sheep, and if it falls into a pit on the Sabbath, will he not take hold of it and lift it out? So I think you get the idea here. Here's another illustration is Mark 3. He entered again into the synagogue, and a man was there with a withered hand, and they were watching him, they being the Pharisees, to see if he would heal him on the Sabbath so that they might accuse him. And again, this is another situation where Yeshua heals him, but it is lawful to do good on the Sabbath. Now, again, when the Pharisees are watching Yeshua, they are both seeking to accuse him based on the written Torah and the oral Torah. So I'm going to bring up a couple things just to be aware of in the Mishnah. The Mishnah is just oral Torah codified. The first thing to be aware of is that there were certain prohibitions given by the rabbis to people to just tell them, hey, this is what we constitute as work. So I'll read just a little bit of this. This is Mishnah Shabbat 7. This fundamental Mishnah enumerates those who perform the primary categories of labor prohibited on Shabbat, which number 40 less than 1, or 39. They are grouped in accordance with their function: one who sows, one who plows, one who reaps, one who gathers, sheaves into a pile, one who threshes, and I can continue to read. But the primary idea here is that they made the prohibitions based on temple service. So anything doing with making the bread for the table of showbread, weaving the curtains in the tabernacle, weaving the linen garments for the priests. So, they associated this with Yahweh ceasing his work, and we too need to cease our work in relation to the tabernacle. So that's a long and complicated topic, and I'm not going to go into it at the moment. I just want you to be aware that it's there. But I also want to look at Mishnah Shabbat 2, and I want you to notice this is one proof text of many. They kind of get into the Mishnah, into the weeds of everything. What can you do? What can't you do? And what they do here is, hey, when can you light a candle and when can you put it out? And there's a little part in here. If there's a candle burning and you put out the wick so that a sick man may sleep, then you're exempt from the law. Oops, I popped that over. Didn't want to pop that over. So, did it again. So just see here that even in the Mishnah, the rabbis are seeking to allow exemptions when you're doing good, when life is at stake. And so what would I say to my son, to any first responder? I would say, firstly, in your heart be circumcised. Seek to want to rest in the Lord on the seventh day. And if given the choice in your schedule to work on the seventh day or not work on the seventh day, by all means, choose the ones where you don't work on the seventh day. But it might also be good and right to allow others to not work on the Sabbath as well. And so every once in a while, you might take that shift. Now, what I've noticed is a lot of people don't have control over their schedules. Is it okay for you to work on the Sabbath? I would say yes. I mean, you need to have a livelihood. And in that sense, you are still a part of the system of Egypt and you have no say. A lot of people are in that category. Even though you're not a first responder, you still have no say a lot of times. And I've been in different groups that that have different opinions on that. They just say, well, you should quit your job. I'm not in that category. I'm more of, if you can find another job that allow you to honor the Sabbath, that's where your heart should be. And then you should take steps to move toward that. But if you are a first responder and you are there to do good, and to help people, Yahweh is all for that. And again, you know in your heart whether or not you're taking shifts that are a way for you to get out of doing something. Like some people will just if you're using first responder as an excuse not to observe the Sabbath, well, that's not good. But if you're doing it because you really are just seeking to help people and you want to balance how to observe the Sabbath in a good and right way, well, then if you're working on the Sabbath, then I think that would be fine. So this is, and I'll leave with this. This is one of the things that I think are important with elders in a community is that we really shouldn't be making these decisions in a vacuum. When you're a part of a community, you theoretically have elders that are righteously by the Spirit interpreting the law for the good of the community. And so you could bring the same question to your elders and your elders would weigh in on that. And let's just say you were an elder. Well, you can't be an island unto yourself. You take it to the other elders and you kind of hash through it to see what would be good and right. So I think that's about it for now. I've heard some other things, but I think that is a good short answer, and I'll just leave it there. Just remember, everyone, in your heart and with as much as you can in your body, in the same way that Yeshua honored the Sabbath, did good on the Sabbath, and sought to obey every one of the Torah's commandments, statutes, and judgments, and Yeshua did exactly right and perfectly. If we want to be like our Messiah, we've got to do that too every day of our lives, and that's why we call it Everyday Torah. I'll see you next time.